Yeah, and that's one thing I really love about this game is it's very realistic. Comparing this game, Shock Force 2, to the original 2000. Actually, just give you guys a heads up. I believe May 31st or May 2020 is a 20-year anniversary of Combat Mission. The original one, I believe, is called Beyond
Overlord.
Yeah. So one thing I love about this studio and is that they found a great recipe, right? With the first Combat Mission, right? Like I remember when it first came out, I just played that game to death, right? Just constantly playing it. And instead of saying, all right, let's try to include a strategic section or let's try to do something else, they just kept refining that game over and over, increasing the graphics, changing out the engine, making it better. Like in the recent Engine 4, they added a couple things that I really was like kind of surprised, and it kind of goes to what
just to be clear, it's they're modules. They're still on the second engine. So the first three games, Overlord, Barbarossa, and Africa Corps, were all on the Combat Mission 1 engine, which didn't have one-to-one sprite ratios and was locked in at 60-second turn increments. And we should probably talk about the gameplay in a second because we didn't do that really in the interview either. But the Combat Mission 2 engine came out with Combat Mission Shock Force 1 in 2007, and all of the games since then have been running on the Combat Mission 2 engine, which introduced things like you still have the turn option, but you can also have completely real-time. You have one-to-one sprite ratios, so one soldier equals one guy, much higher graphical fidelity, and they've continued to upgrade that engine with new modules. So as you said, like I think they're on the 4th or the 5th module now, which add a bunch of new capabilities and features to it, but it's still the same core game engine as what came out in 2007.
Yeah, so this game Engine 4, like, it is really amazing. And this applies to Tortuga's point before. They have improved infantry spacing. So, like, infantry, it says on here, infantry on the move will respect each other's personal space. So, like, it's amazing that the game developer, when he's upgrading the engine, is like, what can we do to make this game more realistic? And while I'm moving soldiers on the battlefield, it feels exactly like it. It is very, very similar to what I've seen and what actually shows up in the game, and it's just amazing. Like the couple of cool things, like so infantry spacing. They also have like AI can do area fire orders, which is like cool, and then soldiers can even peek around building corners, which I'll be honest, that's what soldiers do. Like when you're doing a CQB, I think that's what they still call it. You're peeking around corners. You know.
Wait, how did they do that? I don't even know how to do that with my soldiers. How do you do that, Sean?
You don't tell them to do it. They just do it on their own.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So like if you position your men along a wall, they may peek around the corner or over the top of a wall.
Okay, so they've been doing that the whole time then. Because so in Shock Force 2, one of the maps I've played a lot is if you sort the scenario list by shortest battles, just short by like battle length, and it's one of the shorter ones. It's like the third or fourth down. Now, granted, this is with all the DLC, so I'm playing it. This is the German DLC. This is the German. There's like 4 German APCs that are taking on 4 Syrian APCs, and they start on opposite sides of the map, and they both bum rush the middle to try to take control of the town, and there's also 2 hills, one on each side. So it's basically this very standard kind of like rush the map type thing, but it's done from this, now we're playing it in Combat Mission, which means it's not like in StarCraft or something else. It's not your normal bum rush. It's not Wargame Red Dragon. It means you have to be very, very tactical about it. And this is one of the things I didn't like about the game, is that I just kept dying. So the game is not easy. I mean, because we're talking a lot about how amazing this game is, but it would only be fair to point out that the interface is not it's not gorgeous. It's a little clunky. I'm not even sure where they got their hotkey mapping from. The hotkeys, I don't know if you can redefine them, but just like I was looking at like move is like N and face is like Q or something, or G, I don't know. Like the hotkeys, you just have to memorize them. or you have to worry, or you just have to click your mouse a lot in order to execute one simple order. So there's little downsides. It's got that war game built in. It's all stuff we're used to. We're used to somewhat clunkier interfaces with war games. But just to let people know, that does exist here. It's not the perfect game.
One thing I didn't realize until I kind of came back to this again a little bit before the interview was my memory of the original combat mission games was they essentially used the same interface and almost the same UI design of close combat in terms of your orders. Like I thought you would right click on a unit and then you'd get like a pop-up of eligible commands. And it doesn't really do that anymore. You've got like sort of a sub-menu panel of orders down like on the lower ribbon of the screen where you get a lot of info. But I kind of wished I had been able to like right-click on a unit and then just have the order options pop up. There's a hotkey that does it, but I wonder why they don't do something like that where I just right-click and then it shows like move orders, combat orders, or whatever like that, just right up. Like they could use a little bit better tooltips or something like that. I think the terrain graphics are a little bit dated. I think the equipment graphics are actually pretty damn good. Like when you zoom in on an M1 Abrams, in my opinion, it looks pretty damn good. But the soldiers themselves look pretty damn good. And to your point, they move and they look like, it looks like you're watching footage of U.S. soldiers or whoever, in Iraq or something like that. And the way they move and the way they carry themselves. But I think the biggest area for opportunity is the textures of the terrain. That's where it still looks a little bit like, I am playing a game that was designed like 10 years ago or something like that. That I think is the one big area where it's like, this doesn't look as good as it could. It looks pixelated. It doesn't look, like what we're used to seeing terrain looking like in new games that are coming out now. And I think, I don't know if that's an engine limitation or not, but that could be one thing. I think, we're an hour into this. We haven't actually talked about how you play Combat Mission.
One thing I want to add, though, about the terrain just before we jump into Combat Mission is the whole terrain plane floats on this, like, background. It kind of bothers me too. I don't exactly understand why that was done. It's like a floating map above some infinite ground or something. I don't know. It probably is just a personal preference. I'm sure it's a personal preference. A lot of people
almost like someone took a table and then built like this in like a sand, like a. I don't know, like they built a model of a battlefield on like a table.
Yeah.
And then it just ends and falls off on the edges.
It reminds me of Tabletop Simulator, that like once you're not looking at the tabletop, except for it's just fuzz. It's just like blurry fuzz everywhere else.
Yeah.